I don't know if you guys have heard what's been happening out at Buffalo Trace recently, but they have been dropping some pretty impressive bottles. And these are not really modern bottles. These bottles have been out for maybe a couple of years, 2019 some of them, all very exclusive. The way they drop it is a little bit interesting, when they drop it, where they drop it, and sort of how they drop it. So let's talk about what's been going on out there at Buffalo Trace and see whether or not this might be the new normal or just something that's happening right now. But I'll tell you what, if you're not looking at the photos, it ain't your normal standard Blanton's. I'll give you that. Hello. So I did a video about this a few months back, link it up here, about Buffalo Trace and what sort of unicorns they had started to drop. Now, if you've never been out to Buffalo Trace, pretty much they have a line anywhere from 50 to 500 people every morning. And now these people are lining up just looking for Blanton's, Weller Special Reserve, Eagle Rare 10 or EHT Taylor small batch. They're the allocated bottles that they rotate through. You can only get one of these bottles every 90 days, which is a pretty good system. They have wristbands. They are professional at dealing with crowds and all that other stuff. And we've all been there. Well, all of us in the area that have got into bourbon, we love it there. It's a great distillery. They have amazing tours. Their tastings are free. Their tours are free. You can go online and book a tour, and they might say that they are sold out, but if you show up 90% of the time, you can get on a tour sometime that day, and it is well worth doing. One of the best tours. They make some of the best stuff. You know, you can see where the Blanton's is made. Post some videos in here on some of my other tours, and check out my other videos. You'll see one of the tours pretty much in its entirety. But yeah, but the actual bottles that they give out are pretty basic as far as they're still allocated in a lot of areas, but coming less and less so. And you can get Buffalo Trace up to about, I think you get 12 bottles in total at certain stages. Sometimes it's 6, sometimes it's less, but 12 is about normal. So you could get 10 bottles of Buffalo Trace or 11, and then one of their special ones, and then you're in jail for 90 days. So anyway, great system, and already have massive lines. Well, then they started dropping some of their single oak project, and their single oak project was an experimental thing they did a few years ago, where they took different parts of the tree, different trees, different areas the trees were growing, different mash bills. They took the bottom third of the tree, the top third, the middle third of the tree. And when I say middle, it's really the parts they can use for barrels are only really between just above the soil to the first branch. Once you start getting branches, you start getting knots, and that will make your barrel leak. So there's only a small part of the tree that is used for barrels, and then they divided that up. So they did about 100 plus barrels, and put them in these little 375s and sold them in the gift shop. And then you could scan a QR code and go to the website and rate it. So barrel 80, I believe, was the winner of that. But this happened, a few years ago. Maybe put the date in here. But I'm thinking 2020, 2019 to 21. But anyway, a few years ago, game over. Then all of a sudden, they started releasing them again at the gift shop. So that was weird. Now they'd normally put these things out around after lunchtime, from what I've heard. I've been lucky enough to try at least one of them, and it's good. It's different. It's got that very Buffalo Trace, taste to it, but it's different than normal Buffalo Trace. So it's good. But anyway, so then recently they did this thing, Taste of the Trace, and it was a meal pairing thing. I think it was $150 a seat, and you got some level of food. I don't know if it was a full dinner, and they paired it with whiskey, and they told you could purchase one of these special bottles. Now, the bottle ended up being EHT Taylor 18-year marriage. Now, EHT Taylor 18-year marriage, man, that came out 2020. and it is basically a marriage of 3 different mash bills, 2 different rye bourbon mash bills, and their wheated bourbon mash bill, all aged for 18 years. Now, this thing goes on secondary for, man, in the crazy days, over $2,000, and even now, you know, 1,600 bucks. And they sold it for 100 bucks, just MSRP. So that was pretty impressive, and people were pretty shocked by that. And they started releasing a lot more of these gift baskets, which will be Weller Red or Antique Weller 107, sometimes foolproof, in a gift basket with maybe an ashtray or whatever. So that was also something pretty good and unique they started to do more of. Then, this was coming into Thanksgiving, Black Friday. Just before Thanksgiving, they dropped EH Taylor 4 grain. Now, EH Taylor 4 grain is another special EH Taylor mash bill. Now, EH Taylor 4 grain is a 4 grain, which is also unusual for EH Taylor. So it includes wheat with the rye and the corn and the barley, the malted barley. So once again, another $1,500, $1,200 to $1,600 secondary bottle, $119. They just had it upstairs. So when you go into you get your wristband, you walk up to the gift shop. Now, a lot of this stuff has been upstairs, so you need to walk up the stairs, and that's where a lot of this really special stuff's been dropping. So here's Taylor 4 grain. There's another amazing thing. And then on the same day, they dropped Daniel Weller. Now, Daniel Weller is a bit of a money grab. They're using an Emmer wheat, a slightly different wheat than the normal Weller. From all accounts, it isn't all that good, but it is also $500 a bottle. But the secondary price is sat around $2,500, just basically because of its scarcity. It might have dropped a little bit now. Now, secondary on all of this stuff has dropped because a whole bunch of it got released, but there weren't a whole bunch of the Daniel Wellers, but I heard there may be 5 to 10, so some lucky people got those. And then on Black Friday, they had... Okay, intermission here. Now, because most people do not watch till the end, I've put this in at the start, and also I lost the footage, so double whammy, and we get to check out these dancing girls. But anyway, so me and JK Services are going to do a Christmas giveaway. So up on the screen right now will be the link you need to go to. Follow that link, and link in the description below. Basically, go to JK Services, and that will take you to a link back to my Google Forms, and sign up. So my members will get their normal extra allotments, and any $5 extra spend at JK Services will get you 1 extra ticket. And I'll tell you what, if you know anything about me and James, we're pretty generous with our giveaways, and we're going to do a mega sample pack. A mega sample pack times 2, maybe even times 3, a little bit TBD, but it's going to be worth your while. So anyway, follow the link, sign up, and win. The Almaty Lee 100th anniversary. So the Almaty Lee 100th anniversary was a bottle they brought out for basically would have been the 100th birthday of Almaty Lee. Once again, something that was released years ago. And then all of a sudden they find a lot of it, and they released a whole table of this stuff, so went pretty quick, as you can imagine. But just normal Almaty Lee prices for something that, it's funny, the secondary market on this has dropped a lot, but still, people wanting $500-600 for this bottle, and it is special. It's a very special bottle. I believe it's 100 proof, and it's a one-off. So you might be asking, like I am, how are they doing this?
What the hell is even that? Get everybody out of my...
Because, there's the 3-tier system where the distillery is not allowed to sell you a bottle. The distillery has to sell it to a distributor, who has to sell it to a liquor store, who has to sell it to you. Now, there are ways around it, and the way I think they might be getting around this is the Kentucky Vintage Liquor Law, Spirits Law, and that allows you to maybe cut out the middleman if the bottle is not in production anymore. And there's some very loose wording on what that means, and some people have taken it to say anything that's basically not been sold, like all this stuff would be under that law. So maybe that's how they're doing it. And then that also begs the question, what else do they have? They have that whole vault. I don't know if you've been to Buffalo Trace, they have this vault room with some amazing stuff in there. Now, a lot of it they're not ever going to sell because it's one-off stuff, but maybe they've got other vaults places. Will be interesting. I see this happening a lot more in the industry. People are boosting excitement and sales with these LEs that they never used to bring out a lot of, and now all of a sudden have a lot of them. Old Forester President's Choice, like they only had maybe 30 odd barrels up until this year, and now they're a barrel 100. So definitely up their game there. I hear there's a lot more BTAC this year, even than normal, and King of Kentucky, all that stuff. And then with this old stuff coming back online, maybe, you know, what other distilleries have got in their back room that now can be sold directly to the public. So yeah, I think that's where the industry's at right now. There's definitely a decline. There's been an oversupply, and maybe, I wouldn't say, people are still fanatical about it. Every time I go to a drop, there seems to be more people than ever. But I do think everybody has sort of come to a point where they have their collection, and they're not growing it like they used to. So sales are inevitably going to slow, but I do think the more people that get into bourbon, the more people, once you're into bourbon, there's nowhere else to go.
Hey, hang on, fellas. Don't you think Brittany's been through enough? I mean, maybe it's finally time for us all to just leave her alone.
Butters, don't be such a pussy.
Okay.
You're going to give up drinking, because you start out with a light beer, you end up with a heavy beer, you end up through some spirits, and then you hit the king of spirits, which I feel is bourbon. And just for flavor and taste, you might go to scotch. But maybe you go to tequila, but you're not going back to vodka. Or you might just stop drinking, which is fine. So I think, and once you start drinking these high-end stuff, you're not going back to bottom shelf. So I don't think, the market's going to have a bit of a correction, but it's not a correction I think the consumers have to worry about. I think it's going to be good times, Okay, maybe the President's Choices aren't as good as they used to be. Maybe the BTACs aren't as good as they used to be, because, they used to say, okay, we're going to release a George C. Stach, and it's just from this area, this warehouse, these barrels, and now they've had to expand that. But that's been happening since like 2016, so I don't know. I think it should be good. It'll be really interesting in these next year is going to be interesting to see what they do, see what they drop. I can't imagine how busy Buffalo Trace would be if they started, let's release Pappy's. Let's put Pappy 15 up there and stuff like that. We're going to have, because the flippers, they've stayed away. They've done a good job of staying away, and the flippers might also stay away if there's no market in it anymore. Like, these guys don't want to spend all this time and effort to make $80. Now, some will, but they're looking for the big scores. And if the secondary market comes down, which it definitely is right now, I think it's more better for the people that want to drink it and buy it and get it. So anyway, let's see what Buffalo Trace does next. I'm actually going there this Friday, so I don't know when this video will come out. Maybe I'll get it out Thursday, but I'll be there for the toast of the Trace. Now, I'm not expecting to get anything like an EHT Taylor 4 grain or 18-year marriage, and the reason I say that is I got an email from them saying the special bottle that I will get, I'm in jail for 90 days. Now, where I think on these really special ones, you're in jail for life. And it's funny because I've seen a few people complain, oh my God, you're in jail for life. Well, I'll probably never get an EHT Taylor 4 grain in my life unless I want to go buy it at secondary. I'm not going to get EHT Taylor 4 grain from the Buffalo Trace distillery ever. So the fact that people got one, that should be fine. If you want another one, get it however else, go to a liquor store, secondary, whatever. But yeah, the fact that these ultra premium bottles are 1 per lifetime is absolutely fine. So yeah, so I will make another video. I'll probably take my camera and we'll see what we get there. It should be interesting. I'm sort of imagining, in the past it's been an E.H. Taylor, just a normal one, or maybe a Blanton's pick from the distillery, which that'd be quite cool. So anyway, it should be good. Should be good. Go out there, and then it's allocation season. So Total Wine drop on Friday night, Saturday morning. So we'll see if I can get back in time to go to that. So thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks to all my members, and tell me what you think you're going to look for in the new year. All right, thanks. 107 could be whatever, but the guy said because they were using water to flush out the extra, it's probably a special reserve. But this will come up later in the movie. I will probably just let the tour guide speak most of the time because he was really good. Totally recommend going to the Buffalo Trace tour. You might have to book in advance, but you can also just pick them up on the day. But of course, it's a bit of a risk. Look at that. Look at all that fucking gold. Go. Put your mouth in there.
Copper acts as a filter to pull sulfides out of the yeast vents. If you leave those sulfides in, they make whiskey smell. Dirty cabbage and weeds. This way on its own, the copper just pulls it right out. So E.H. Taylor thought, well, if a little bit of copper's nice, well, a lot of copper's got to be really nice. So he made sure that copper touched every step of the process. He had fermenting vats lined with copper. He had a state-of-the-art column still built entirely out of copper. He had copper pipes used to move everything around. So he called the distillery OFC, or Old Fired Copper, to let people know they're getting a quality copper touch product.
Buffalo.
So, as we got to walk up the porch here, you also got to walk past our mascot, Thunder, crossing our little water feature here. This is a diorama of the way that the buffalo, the American bison, used to cross the Kentucky River in this area. Of course, that's not to scale. But before the settlers built locks and dams along the Kentucky River, it was incredibly shallow through here. You'd have herds of American bison that would come through this area just across the river. When we're talking about herds, we're not talking about 40 or 50, 2,000 buffalo at any given moment roam through here. So when the first frontiersmen were coming here to settle, they didn't have maps and roads, of course. They were cutting all those maps and roads, so they ended up following the trails of the American bison they called buffalo traces. What's our mash bill? Yeah. So what is a mash bill or what is our mash bill? So we don't disclose the percentages. I don't know them. As we walk along the length of Warehouse C, you'll actually be able to notice through the windows that there's actually more floors than there are windows. That's because Warehouse C is currently a rick house design. Back in the 1800s, when rick houses were invented, they didn't have the fancy lifting machines that we do today. Take 4 men would have to pick up the barrels and put them in the ricks. They could really only pick those barrels up about 3 barrels high, where it was exceedingly dangerous, so they just put a new floor every 3 barrels. But the very important thing about a rick house design is that the rick structure that holds the barrels and the outside structure of the buildings are 2 separate units. That means that damage to the ricks doesn't necessarily mean damage to the outside structure, and damage to the outside structure doesn't necessarily mean damage to the ricks. If you want to stop here, you can actually see that with spectrograph. That top layer of bricks up there is a much lighter color because in April of 2006, a tornado blew through this part of Frankfort, ripped the roof off of Warehouse C. Now that wouldn't have been too bad. So the barrels were fine, but it also damaged the elevator we used to get the barrels down. So those barrels were stuck up there during direct summer sun, summer storms, for about 7 months till we were able to get that elevator fixed. When we pulled those barrels down, we thought, these are probably going to be pretty nasty. But they tasted like no other bourbon we'd had before, and it was good enough. So they gave it its own label, and they called it Colonel E.H. Taylor Small Batch Warehouse C Tornado Surviving Bourbon. That's all right, everybody. So this is brand new shed. This is where our brand new barrels are unloaded. Okay, we have a loading dock over here, 2 semi trucks to back up to. These people make sure those barrels are damaged during shipping. If they're all good, they get put on these conveyor belts. Leave that green door back there. So in the systems room, the barrels are filled. Barrels are roughly 14 whiskey. Depending on who you ask, they'll tell you anywhere from 50 to 70% of the flavor of bourbon comes from the barrels and aging process alone. Now, by law, we use new charred oak in the barrels. New means they've never been used before. We get our new barrels anymore from our own cooperage, Cumberland Cooperage in East Farmstead, Kentucky, about an hour and a half south of here, into the barrel over time. As these barrels heat up, there's a lot of pressure inside, and the whiskey will push into the barrel. When it cools down, pressure is released, whiskey pulls out of it, bringing with it all the sugars, flavors, and the color for the whiskey in the barrel. Now, most of our barrels are American white oak. I'd rather go away. Now, the tracks that lead to this conveyor belt are a tripping hazard, so as we walk this way, I do ask you to watch the step. Whiskey comes off our stills around 140 proof, maybe a little bit lower. After that, it comes all the way over here. We have to process the whiskey for barrel. Now, the important thing about putting whiskey into the barrels is that we can't legally put whiskey in the barrels higher than 125 proof. So we have to add crisp, clear filtered water, bring it down to 125 proof or lower. Then they'll fill 8 barrels at a time in here. Each barrel is filled up to exactly 53 gallons. Then we're going to pump the butt. We'll roll down to you can see in there, which is an inkjet printer. You can see lot number, name of the distillery, mashbill, date filled all on the head of the barrel. We'll roll down here to where these employees are going to make sure there's no major leaks. We're going to incorporate off the barrels. They're all good. We put on these tracks. We'll roll down to any of the warehouses over there, or to semi-trucks, or regardless to any warehouse at all. Between the property we have down here and the new warehouse up on the hill, we have the capacity to store about 1.6 million barrels. Nearly every single one of those barrels is filled in this little room right here.
I mean, imagine working in that smell. That'd be glorious.
All right, everybody. So this is the regate room. It's where we dump the barrel from the whiskey for the bottom. So they'll roll the barrels into this little door over here. Hydraulic lift picks up the barrels, puts them at the top of the line. You can see there's a power drill hanging right there. That power drill is a fancy corkscrew. It'll drill into these bumps as well. Everybody. Diffuse out of it. Typically, the water in the whiskey will actually diffuse out a little bit faster than the alcohol does, so proof usually goes up even as the level goes down, but some alcohol does get out as well, and that is completely lost product.
That's amazing how much is lost.
Yeah. Got any blankies? Got any blends? A little bit.
My wife told me to be more in touch with my feminine side. So I crashed the car. And then ignored her all day for no reason.
Alright, everybody. So right now we are in Blanton's Bottling Hall. This is one of our single barrel bottling halls. Every step of the bottling process is done in miniature right here. So roll the barrels in here, dump them, put it in the jar, and then they'll sit those bats back there with the shelf opens. Proof the whiskey down appropriately, and it'll stick these pictures behind all of our awards. Then, at the top of the line, they'll fill 6 bottles at a time. Each bottle will have a little paper collar on it. Put the topper on, seal with wax, and before.
So one thing I didn't mention is that the tours at Buffalo Trace are free, so that's pretty cool. And at the end of them, you get to do this tasting. It's always the same. The vodka, the Buffalo Trace, the Weller Special Reserve, Taylor Small Batch, and the bourbon cream and the root beer, and you get chocolate. They have you mix the root beer and the bourbon cream together to make like a root beer float. Delicious. Now this is called the Vault, and this room is amazing. They've got all the BTACs, which is Buffalo Antique Collection, Thomas H. Handy, George T. Stagg, Eagle Rare, 17. Up the top, they've got Pappies, they've got special, limited edition, one-of-one Blantons, Pappies 23 and 25, which, they're going on secondary for $30,000, $40,000. OFC, all of the EH Taylors. The sour mash alone is probably worth $10,000. So this room is in the many, many millions of dollars. It's behind lock and key and barred doors. So yeah, some amazing stuff in here that you'll probably see nowhere else. This is a great collection I've got here. And this is just after you do the tasting, just before you go down the stairs. So I believe that is like Pappy 23 cask strength and Pappy 25. I'd never even seen them before, so it was pretty cool to see that.
So, pretty successful trip so far. Got a William Heaven Hill 17 from Heaven Hill this morning. Picked up a little book, Curious Intentions, at Jim Beam. That made us late, so we were super late for our tour, but we made it to the Buffalo Trace tour, and then the guy gave us a ticket to get a small batch. I've got a fucking sweet mellow corn. I think I'm going to pour us a couple of 23 birthday bourbons and have a little birthday toast in the parking lot of Buffalo Trace, which is probably frowned upon, but you gotta do what you gotta do.
So thanks for watching that video. I hope that's made you want to go to Buffalo Trace a little bit more and check them out. It's a really good time. Like I say, I don't know if it's worthwhile getting in line too early in the morning. You can normally get what you want. So go somewhere else first, then hit up Buffalo Trace, try and hook up a tour, and have fun out there. Hey, thanks guys. See ya.